Keanu Reeves walked into the brightly lit studio, his signature calmness masking any nerves he might have felt. The crew buzzed around him, adjusting lights and microphones, while the audience murmured in anticipation. Everyone knew this was going to be a big interview. Keanu wasn't just another actor promoting his latest film. He was a cultural icon, someone who had managed to stay relevant for decades without losing his authenticity. But today, the stakes felt different. The host of the show was known for her sharp tongue and unapologetic approach to controversial topics. Her interviews often went viral because she pushed boundaries, sometimes too far. As Keanu took his seat across from her, the energy in the room shifted. The host greeted him with a wide smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She complimented him on his recent projects and thanked him for joining the show. Keanu nodded politely, his voice steady as he returned the pleasantries. He seemed relaxed, almost unfazed by the tension simmering beneath the surface. Little did anyone know, this would not be your typical chat about movies or fame. Something bigger was brewing, though no one could predict exactly how it would unfold. The stage was set and the cameras rolled. What happened next would leave millions talking for weeks. As the conversation began, the host started with harmless questions about Keanu's career. She asked about his role in the new action movie and whether he enjoyed performing his own stunts. Keanu answered with ease, sharing anecdotes from the set and cracking a few jokes that made the audience laugh. His charm was undeniable, and the atmosphere remained lighthearted. For a moment, it seemed like the interview might go smoothly after all. But those watching closely noticed the glint in the host's eye, a sign that she was biding her time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Sure enough, after a few more minutes of casual banter, the tone of the interview changed abruptly. The host leaned forward in her chair, her expression shifting from friendly to intense. Without warning, she steered the conversation toward a hot-button issue that had been dominating headlines for weeks. Her question caught Keanu off guard, but only for a split second. With a slight pause, he processed what she had said, and then responded in a way that no one expected. Instead of diving headfirst into the debate or dodging the question entirely, Keanu chose a middle path. "I believe kindness should guide us all," he said simply, his voice carrying a quiet strength. The words hung in the air, reverberating through the studio. For a brief moment, there was silence. Even the usually boisterous audience held their breath, unsure of how to react. It wasn't the explosive response the host had anticipated, nor was it the vague non-answer she might have hoped to exploit. Instead, Keanu's reply struck a chord, simple yet profound, cutting through the noise of divisive rhetoric. The host blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. This wasn't the script she had envisioned. Unwilling to let the moment pass without pressing further, the host quickly recovered and launched into a follow-up question. Her tone grew sharper, more pointed. She challenged Keanu, accusing him of being out of touch with the realities faced by everyday people. "Don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to speak out on these issues?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. The audience stirred, sensing the tension building between them. Cameras zoomed in on Keanu's face, capturing every flicker of emotion. Yet, his expression remained composed, almost serene. Keanu listened, carefully, letting her finish before responding. When he finally spoke, his words were measured but firm. "I respect everyone's right to express their opinions," he began, his voice steady. "But I also think it's important to listen, to truly hear what others are saying instead of jumping to conclusions." He paused, looking directly at the host. "We're all living our own lives, facing our own challenges. Labeling someone based on assumptions doesn't help anyone." His response drew a murmur of agreement from the audience. Some even clapped softly, though they quickly stopped when the host shot them a disapproving glance. Despite Keanu's eloquence, the host wasn't ready to back down. If anything, his calm demeanor seemed to frustrate her more. She pressed on, trying to paint him as indifferent or disconnected. "Aren't you worried about being seen as privileged?" she asked, her tone dripping with accusation. The word hung in the air like a challenge, privileged. It was a label often thrown around in heated debates, designed to provoke guilt or defensiveness. But Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his body language open but assertive. Privilege is a complex topic, he admitted, choosing his words carefully. And yes, I've been fortunate in many ways. But fortune doesn't define my values or my actions. I try to live my life with empathy and humility, and I hope that's reflected in how I treat others. His answer was neither defensive nor apologetic. It was honest, thoughtful, and delivered with a sincerity that resonated deeply. The host opened her mouth to respond but hesitated, clearly unsure of how to counter such a grounded perspective. For the first time in the interview, she appeared uncertain, her confidence wavering. The audience, however, was fully engaged now. They had tuned in expecting entertainment, maybe even drama, but what they were witnessing was something far more compelling. Keanu's responses weren't rehearsed or polished for public consumption. They felt genuine, raw, and relatable. People began whispering to each other, nodding in approval. Social media platforms started buzzing as clips of the interview spread online. Viewers praised Keanu for standing his ground without stooping to pettiness or aggression. Meanwhile, the host struggled to regain control of the narrative, searching for a way to steer the conversation back to her original agenda. But Keanu wasn't playing along. He continued to answer each question with grace and poise, refusing to let the host bait him into an argument. When she brought up another polarizing issue, he deflected with a simple yet powerful statement. We don't always need to pick sides. Sometimes the best thing we can do is find common ground. His words echoed through the studio, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Even the host, who prided herself on her ability to rattle high-profile guests, found herself at a loss. She had underestimated Keanu Reeves, and it showed. As the interview progressed, the dynamic between the two became increasingly clear. The host was determined to create controversy, to manufacture conflict where none existed. But Keanu refused to play that game. He stayed true to himself, speaking from the heart rather than reacting impulsively. His calm demeanor and insightful responses turned what could have been a tense confrontation into a masterclass in emotional intelligence. By the time the segment ended, it was obvious who had emerged victorious. Not through hostility, but through authenticity. And for Keanu, that was the only victory that mattered. The host tried to regain her footing, determined not to let Keanu take control of the narrative. She shifted gears slightly, softening her tone in an attempt to appear more conversational. But Keanu, she said, leaning forward with a practiced smile, don't you think staying neutral can sometimes come across as indifference? People might see it as avoiding responsibility. Her question hung in the air, dripping with implication. It was clear she was still fishing for a reaction, hoping to push him into defending himself or admitting some form of guilt. Keanu didn't hesitate. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, his expression thoughtful but calm. I understand where you're coming from, he replied, his voice steady and measured. But I don't believe in staying silent when something truly matters. At the same time, I also believe that speaking up doesn't always mean taking sides. It means listening, learning, and finding ways to contribute positively. His words were simple yet profound, cutting through the noise of performative debates that dominated media discussions. The audience seemed captivated, hanging on every word. Sensing that her attempts to paint him as indifferent weren't working, the host decided to change tactics. She brought up another controversial topic, this time referencing a recent incident involving another celebrity who had faced backlash for their comments online. What do you think about that situation? She asked, her tone deliberately casual. It was a trap, a way to get Keanu to criticize someone else or reveal his own biases. But once again, he deflected with grace. We all make mistakes, Keanu said, his voice gentle but firm. No one is perfect. What's important is how we grow from those moments and learn to be better. He paused, looking directly at the host before adding, judging others harshly doesn't help anyone. We should focus on understanding and supporting each other instead. His response drew murmurs of approval from the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement. For the second time, the host found herself struggling to maintain her aggressive stance. Frustrated by Keanu's unwavering composure, she pressed further, raising her voice slightly. "But isn't there a point where silence becomes complicity? Shouldn't people use their platforms to speak out against injustice?" she challenged, clearly hoping to provoke a stronger reaction. This time, however, Keanu leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed but confident. He looked at her evenly, his gaze steady. "I agree that using your platform responsibly is important," he began, choosing his words carefully. "But speaking out isn't just about making statements, it's about action. Are you helping? Are you contributing in meaningful ways? That's what counts." His response silenced the room momentarily, the weight of his words sinking in. Even the host seemed taken aback by his clarity and conviction. She glanced briefly at her notes, perhaps realizing that her prepared questions weren't having the intended effect. As the interview continued, the host grew increasingly desperate to find a crack in Keanu's armor. She shifted topics rapidly, jumping from one sensitive issue to another, but Keanu remained unshaken. Each of his answers carried the same underlying message. Kindness, empathy, and authenticity matter more than trying to win arguments or score points. His responses weren't rehearsed or polished. They felt genuine, as if they came straight from the heart. And that sincerity resonated deeply with both the live audience and viewers watching at home. By now, social media was ablaze with reactions. Clips of the interview were being shared across platforms, with fans praising Keanu for his poise and wisdom. Memes and hashtags celebrating his calm demeanor began trending within minutes. People admired how he handled the host's relentless questioning without losing his cool or resorting to pettiness. Some even called it one of the most impressive interviews they'd ever seen, applauding him for turning what could have been a hostile confrontation into a lesson in emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, the host appeared visibly flustered. Her usual confidence seemed to waver under Keanu's steady gaze. She tried one last attempt to rattle him, bringing up a personal aspect of his life, his reputation for being private and reserved. "Do you ever feel like you owe your fans more transparency?" she asked, her tone probing. It was a risky move, bordering on intrusive, but Keanu didn't miss a beat. "My life is my own," he responded simply, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "I share what I'm comfortable sharing, and I keep the rest private. I think everyone deserves that balance." His answer was firm yet respectful, leaving no room for argument. The host blinked, momentarily speechless. For the first time, in the interview, she seemed unsure of how to proceed. Realizing she wasn't going to get the explosive reaction she craved, she abruptly changed course. Smiling brightly, she steered the conversation toward lighter topics, asking about Keanu's hobbies and future projects. But the shift felt awkward and forced, as if she was trying to salvage what little control she had left. Keanu played along, politely, offering brief but pleasant responses. However, the earlier tension lingered, casting a shadow over the rest of the segment. As the interview wrapped up, the host thanked Keanu for joining the show, her tone overly cheerful in an attempt to mask her frustration. Keanu smiled graciously, thanking her in return before rising from his seat. The audience erupted into applause, their admiration for him evident. Many stood up, clapping enthusiastically as he exited the stage. It was clear that Keanu had won them over, not through flashy antics or dramatic statements, but through his genuine and thoughtful approach. Backstage, Keanu exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair as he reflected on the experience. He hadn't expected the interview to go quite like that, but he knew he had stayed true to himself. As clips of the interview continued to spread online, the public reaction only grew more positive. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, calling Keanu a role model for handling adversity with grace and wisdom. Critics of the host accused her of being overly aggressive, arguing that her tactics did more harm than good. In the days that followed, the incident sparked widespread discussion about the nature of celebrity interviews and the importance of respectful dialogue. Viewers praised Keanu for refusing to engage in divisive rhetoric, highlighting his ability to remain composed under pressure. Meanwhile, the host faced backlash for her confrontational style, with many questioning whether such tactics served any real purpose beyond creating controversy. For Keanu, life returned to normal almost immediately. He avoided commenting on the interview publicly, letting his actions speak for themselves. When asked later about the experience, he shrugged it off, saying he merely spoke from the heart. And perhaps that was the real takeaway. Authenticity always triumphs over manufactured conflict. By staying true to his values, Keanu had turned a potentially volatile situation into a powerful reminder of the importance of kindness and empathy in an increasingly divided world. The aftermath of the interview spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of millions around the world. Social media platforms buzzed with reactions as people shared snippets of Keanu's responses, praising his calm and thoughtful demeanor. Clips of him shutting down the host's confrontational questions went viral, racking up millions of views within hours. Fans couldn't stop talking about how he handled the situation with grace, turning what could have been a hostile exchange into a lesson in emotional intelligence. Memes flooded timelines, captions highlighting his wisdom and poise. "Keanu just won the internet," one fan tweeted, summing up the collective sentiment. Meanwhile, the host faced a wave of criticism for her aggressive tactics. Viewers accused her of being overly combative, arguing that her line of questioning did more harm than good. Many felt she had crossed a line by pushing personal topics and making accusations without giving Keanu a fair chance to explain himself. Some even called for her show to be canceled, claiming her style of interviewing only fueled division rather than fostering meaningful conversation. Others defended her, saying that tough questions were necessary to hold celebrities accountable. But the overwhelming response leaned heavily in Keanu's favor, with fans calling him a breath of fresh air in an era dominated by performative outrage. As the debate raged online, Keanu remained largely silent. He avoided engaging with the controversy, choosing instead to focus on his work and personal life. Friends close to him revealed that he hadn't expected the interview to blow up the way it did. In fact, he was surprised by the level of support he received. "He's always been this way," one friend said. "Kind, thoughtful, and genuine. He doesn't do things for attention. He just tries to stay true to who he is." This authenticity resonated deeply with people, many of whom admired Keanu not just as an actor but as a person who seemed untouched by Hollywood's often toxic culture. While Keanu stayed out of the spotlight, the host found herself at the center of intense scrutiny. Her previous interviews resurfaced, with critics pointing out patterns of hostility and manipulation. Some accused her of deliberately baiting guests into arguments to boost ratings. Others argued that her approach alienated viewers rather than encouraging open dialogue. Despite the backlash, she stood by her methods, insisting that tough conversations were essential to addressing societal issues. In a statement released shortly after the interview aired, she claimed she was just doing her job and welcomed the discussion her show had sparked. But not everyone bought her explanation. Several journalists weighed in, analyzing the dynamics of the interview and questioning whether such confrontational tactics were effective. One article argued that while challenging questions had their place, they needed to be asked respectfully and with the intent to understand, not to provoke or humiliate. Another piece praised Keanu for setting an example of how to handle difficult situations with dignity. The consensus among many was clear. Kindness and empathy should guide public discourse, not aggression or judgment. Amidst the chaos, Keanu's words continued to resonate. People revisited his responses, finding new layers of meaning in their outdoor simplicity. His emphasis on listening, learning, and growing struck a chord with audiences tired of divisive rhetoric. Teachers began using clips of the interview in classrooms to teach students about conflict resolution and effective communication. Even mental health professionals highlighted his approach as a model for staying grounded under pressure. It wasn't just an interview anymore. It had become a cultural moment, sparking conversations about how we interact with each other in an increasingly polarized world. For Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in leading by example. He didn't need to shout or argue to make his point. His actions spoke louder than any heated exchange ever could. As days turned into weeks, the initial frenzy began to die down, but the impact lingered. Fans started organizing online campaigns to honor his message of kindness, creating hashtags like Be Like Keanu, and sharing stories of how small acts of compassion made a difference in their lives. These grassroots efforts reflected a broader shift, a desire to move away from negativity and embrace positivity. Behind the scenes, Keanu returned to his quiet routine, grateful for the love and support he'd received, but unfazed by the sudden surge of fame. Those who knew him well weren't surprised by his reaction. He had always valued privacy and humility, rarely seeking the limelight unless it served a greater purpose. Yet, in this moment, he had inadvertently become a symbol of hope for countless individuals looking for guidance in uncertain times. His ability to remain composed and authentic in the face of adversity inspired others to do the same. The host, on the other hand, struggled to recover from the fallout. Ratings for her show dipped significantly as advertisers pulled their support, citing concerns over her controversial style. While some loyal viewers defended her, the majority expressed dissatisfaction, calling for a change in tone. Industry insiders speculated that the incident might mark the beginning of the end for her career, though only time would tell. For now, she retreated from public view, laying low as the storm surrounding her intensified. As the dust settled, the lessons from the interview became impossible to ignore. Viewers realized that meaningful dialogue required mutual respect and understanding, not hostility or blame. Keanu's responses reminded everyone that even in the most challenging situations, it was possible to stay true to oneself without compromising integrity. His calm demeanor and thoughtful answers served as a blueprint for navigating conflicts in everyday life, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful. In the weeks that followed, the story took on a life of its own. Documentaries and podcasts explored the interview in depth, dissecting every moment and analyzing its significance. Books were written about the importance of kindness in leadership and communication, often referencing Keanu's approach as a case study. Schools incorporated discussions about empathy and emotional intelligence into their curriculums, inspired by the ripple effect of his words. What started as a single interview had grown into a movement, touching lives far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Through it all, Keanu remained unchanged. He continued to live his life with the same humility and grace that had earned him admiration in the first place. When asked about the experience during rare interviews, he shrugged it off, saying he had simply done what felt right. And perhaps that was the most remarkable part of the entire ordeal, his ability to inspire millions without seeking recognition or reward. By staying true to himself, Keanu had reminded the world of something profound. Authenticity always wins, no matter how loud the noise around us becomes. The ripple effects of the interview continued to spread, reaching corners of society that few could have anticipated. Schools, workplaces, and community groups began discussing Keanu's approach to conflict resolution, drawing inspiration from his ability to remain calm under pressure. Teachers used his responses as examples in classrooms, showing students how to handle disagreements with respect and understanding. One high school teacher shared a story about using clips of the interview during a lesson on communication skills. "I asked my students to imagine themselves in Keanu's shoes," she explained. "How would they respond if someone tried to provoke them? It sparked an incredible conversation about empathy and staying true to your values." In corporate settings, leaders took notice too. Managers started incorporating Keanu's philosophy into team-building workshops, emphasizing the importance of kindness and active listening in professional environments. A tech company CEO admitted that he had watched the interview multiple times, finding Keanu's demeanor both refreshing and instructive. "We're so quick to argue or defend ourselves," he said in an internal meeting. But Keanu showed us that sometimes the best response is one rooted in patience and compassion. Employees reported feeling more connected and supported, as a result, leading to improved morale and collaboration. Even mental health professionals joined the conversation, highlighting the psychological benefits of Keanu's approach. Therapists pointed out that his ability to stay composed despite provocation demonstrated remarkable emotional regulation, a skill many people struggled to master. What Keanu did was textbook mindfulness, one psychologist noted during a webinar. He didn't react impulsively, he paused, reflected, and responded thoughtfully. That's something we can all learn from. Articles and podcasts exploring these themes gained traction, offering practical advice on how to apply similar strategies in daily life. As the weeks passed, the host's career faced increasing challenges. Advertisers pulled their support for her show, citing concerns over its divisive tone. Viewership plummeted, with many opting to watch alternative programs that promoted constructive dialogue instead of confrontation. Critics argued that her aggressive interviewing style alienated audiences rather than engaging them, leaving little room for meaningful exchange. Some industry insiders speculated that the backlash might force networks to rethink their programming priorities, favoring content that fostered positivity and inclusivity. Despite the mounting criticism, the host made a brief reappearance on social media attempting to address the controversy. In a carefully crafted post, she acknowledged the feedback she'd received and expressed gratitude for the discussions her show had sparked. However, her words rang hollow to many who felt she hadn't truly grasped the impact of her actions. She's still deflecting responsibility, one commenter wrote. Keanu handled tough questions with grace because he genuinely cared about the message he was sending. She just wanted drama. Meanwhile, Keanu quietly returned to work, focusing on his upcoming projects without seeking additional attention. Friends close to him revealed that he had mixed feelings about the entire ordeal. On one hand, he appreciated the outpouring of love and support from fans around the world. On the other hand, he worried that the focus on him overshadowed the bigger picture, the need for greater kindness and understanding in society. He doesn't want this to be about him, a close friend confided. He wants people to take what they learned from that moment and use it to make the world a better place. Fans did exactly that, organizing grassroots initiatives inspired by Keanu's message. Online campaigns encouraged acts of kindness, urging participants to perform small gestures like paying for someone's coffee or leaving uplifting notes in public spaces. Hashtags like #spread kindness and Be the Change trended globally, uniting strangers in a shared mission to counter negativity with positivity. Stories poured in from people whose lives had been touched by these efforts, creating a domino effect of goodwill. One particularly moving example came from a young woman named Sarah, who credited Keanu's interview with helping her navigate a difficult period in her life. Diagnosed with anxiety, she had often struggled to manage stress when faced with conflict. After watching the interview, she decided to adopt Keanu's approach of pausing before reacting. It changed everything, she wrote in a heartfelt post. Instead of lashing out, I started asking myself, what would Keanu do? Now I feel calmer and more in control. Her story resonated with thousands, prompting others to share their own experiences of growth and transformation. Back in Hollywood, Keanu's peers also weighed in on the incident. Fellow actors praised him for setting a new standard for handling public scrutiny. Keanu didn't just shut down a hostile interviewer, he reminded us all of the power of authenticity. One colleague remarked at an award ceremony. Directors and producers echoed this sentiment, noting that his performance off-screen had been just as impressive as any role he'd played on camera. Industry publications hailed him as a role model, calling for more figures in entertainment to follow his lead. For Keanu, however, the praise was secondary to the deeper purpose behind his actions. He believed that everyone had the capacity to create positive change, regardless of their platform or influence. During a rare appearance at a charity event, he spoke briefly about the importance of staying grounded in turbulent times. We're all human, he told the crowd, his voice warm and sincere. We all make mistakes and we all have the chance to grow. Let's focus on lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. The audience erupted into applause, moved by his humility and wisdom. As months went by, the cultural impact of the interview only deepened. Books were written analyzing Keanu's philosophy, while documentaries explored the broader implications of his message. Podcasts dedicated episodes to dissecting his responses, inviting experts to discuss their relevance in today's world. Even late-night talk shows joked about the incident, poking fun at the host's failed attempt to rattle him. Through it, all Keanu remained a symbol of resilience and grace, embodying the idea that true strength lies not in aggression, but in compassion. The host, meanwhile, faded further from public view. Rumors swirled about potential career changes, though nothing was confirmed. Some speculated that she might pivot to producing content focused on empathy and understanding, a stark contrast to her previous style. Whether or not this happened remained unclear, but one thing was certain: her reputation had been irreparably damaged by the fallout from the interview. Through it all, Keanu stayed true to himself, continuing to live a life defined by kindness and humility. He avoided capitalizing on the viral moment, refusing offers for lucrative endorsements or speaking engagements tied to the incident. Instead, he channeled his energy into charitable endeavors, supporting causes close to his heart. His actions reinforced the very principles he had championed during the interview, that authenticity and generosity are the cornerstones of a meaningful life. By the end of the year, the story had evolved into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. What began as a single interview had ignited a global movement, inspiring countless individuals to embrace empathy and kindness in their interactions. Keanu's quiet yet powerful example served as a reminder that even in moments of tension and division, there is always room for connection and understanding. And perhaps that was the most enduring legacy of it all, that a single act of grace could spark a wave of change, proving once again that authenticity always triumphs over noise. Months after the interview, the world seemed to have absorbed the lessons from Keanu's calm and thoughtful responses. The movement inspired by his words continued to grow, transcending borders and cultures. People from all walks of life found common ground in their shared desire for kindness and understanding. In India, a group of university students launched a campaign called Kindness Across Campuses, encouraging peers to resolve conflicts peacefully. In Brazil, local communities organized weekly gatherings where neighbors could come together to discuss issues without judgment or hostility. Even in small towns across Europe and Africa, individuals embraced the idea that compassion could bridge divides. Keanu's influence extended beyond personal interactions. It began shaping larger societal conversations as well. Politicians referenced his philosophy during debates, urging colleagues to focus on collaboration rather than division. Business leaders adopted similar language in boardrooms, prioritizing teamwork over competition. A global nonprofit even created an award named after Keanu, the Reeves Ripple Effect Prize, to honor individuals who demonstrated exceptional empathy and leadership in their communities. The prize quickly gained recognition, with nominations pouring in from every continent. Despite the widespread admiration, Keanu remained humble and grounded. He rarely spoke about the interview publicly, preferring to let his actions speak for themselves. When asked about it during a press conference for one of his films, he simply smiled and said, "I hope people remember that we're all in this together. We can choose to lift each other up or bring each other down. I think the choice is clear." His brief comment resonated deeply, reminding everyone that the essence of his message was timeless and universal. While Keanu avoided the spotlight, the host struggled to rebuild her career. After months of silence, she resurfaced with a new project, an online platform designed to foster open dialogue between opposing viewpoints. Critics were skeptical, questioning whether this was a genuine attempt at redemption or merely a desperate bid to regain relevance. However, some praised her willingness to pivot, noting that change often required taking bold steps. Whether her efforts would succeed remained uncertain, but the shift signaled a possible turning point. Meanwhile, Keanu's impact reached unexpected places. Schools around the world incorporated his interview into their curriculums, teaching children the value of emotional intelligence and respectful communication. Teachers reported seeing noticeable improvements in student behavior, with kids learning to listen more and argue less. Parents echoed these sentiments, sharing stories of how their families had embraced kindness as a core value. One mother wrote a heartfelt letter to Keanu, thanking him for inspiring her son to stand up against bullying in school. "You gave him the courage to be brave without being mean," she wrote. "Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like." The ripple effects weren't limited to interpersonal relationships. Corporations took note of the public's growing demand for empathy and inclusivity, implementing policies to reflect those values. Tech giants introduced programs aimed at reducing workplace toxicity, while retail chains trained employees to handle customer complaints with patience and understanding. Even sports teams adopted team-building exercises centered on mutual respect and trust. Coaches credited these initiatives with improving performance, arguing that harmony within a group translated to success on the field. As the year drew to a close, media outlets reflected on the top stories of the past 12 months, and Keanu's interview consistently appeared near the top of the list. Journalists highlighted how a single moment had sparked a cultural shift, proving that individual actions could inspire collective progress. Documentaries chronicling the phenomenon premiered at film festivals worldwide, earning critical acclaim for their insightful exploration of human connection. Viewers left screenings feeling inspired, carrying the message forward into their own lives. In Hollywood, Keanu's peers celebrated his enduring legacy. At award ceremonies, presenters frequently mentioned his name, not just as an actor but as a symbol of integrity and grace. Industry insiders predicted that future generations of performers would look to him as a role model, someone who used his platform wisely and selflessly. Directors sought to cast him in roles that mirrored his real-life persona, characters defined by quiet strength and unwavering morality. Fans eagerly anticipated these projects, knowing they would carry the same authenticity that made Keanu so beloved. For Keanu himself, life returned to its familiar rhythm. He spent time with friends and family, indulging in hobbies like motorcycling and woodworking. Though he occasionally attended events to support charitable causes, he kept a low profile, content to live simply and privately. Those closest to him described him as unchanged by fame, still the same kind and unassuming person he had always been. "He doesn't need validation," a longtime friend remarked. "He knows who he is, and that's enough." Amidst the accolades and admiration, Keanu's humility stood out most. Unlike many celebrities who capitalized on viral moments, he resisted commercial opportunities tied to the incident. Instead, he focused on giving back quietly, supporting underfunded schools and shelters without seeking recognition. His generosity became legendary among those who benefited from it, though few outside these circles ever knew. It was this quiet dedication to helping others that truly embodied his philosophy, that kindness should guide us all. Back in the digital realm, social media platforms saw a surge in positivity campaigns inspired by Keanu. Influencers partnered with nonprofits to promote mental health awareness, environmental conservation, and social justice. Hashtags like "choose kindness" and "empathy every day" trended regularly, creating virtual communities united by shared values. Memes featuring Keanu's iconic line, "Kindness should guide us all," popped up everywhere, spreading joy and encouragement. For many, scrolling through their feeds no longer felt overwhelming but uplifting thanks to this wave of goodwill. Even late-night comedians joined the fun, weaving Keanu's story into their routines. They joked about his zen-like demeanor and joked that he might be too nice to exist in today's chaotic world. Yet beneath the humor lay a deeper truth. Keanu represented a hopeful vision of humanity, one where empathy triumphed over cynicism. Audiences laughed along, grateful for the reminder that laughter and kindness could coexist. By the time winter arrived, the interview had become part of pop culture history, a defining moment that encapsulated the power of authenticity. Books, analyzing its significance, lined bookstore shelves, while podcasts revisited the event with fresh perspectives. Scholars studied it as a case study in effective communication, marveling at how Keanu's simplicity cut through complexity. What started as a routine celebrity appearance had evolved into a touchstone for anyone seeking guidance in challenging times. Through it all, Keanu stayed true to his principles, refusing to let fame alter his sense of purpose. He believed that everyone had the ability to create positive change, regardless of their circumstances. In interviews promoting his latest movie, he reiterated this belief, urging fans to focus on what united them rather than what divided them. "We're stronger when we work together," he said softly, "and we're happiest when we care for each other." As another year began, the movement inspired by Keanu showed no signs of slowing down. Grassroots organizations sprang up globally, continuing to spread messages of kindness and understanding. Schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods embraced these ideals, fostering environments where empathy thrived. And though Keanu preferred to stay behind the scenes, his quiet example continued to shine brightly, illuminating a path toward a better world, one act of kindness at a time. The years rolled on, and Keanu Reeves's influence only deepened. What had started as a single interview became a cornerstone of modern culture, a reminder that even in the most challenging moments, kindness could prevail. People around the world continued to draw inspiration from his calm and thoughtful demeanor, applying his philosophy to their own lives. Schools taught lessons based on his responses, workplaces embraced his approach to conflict resolution, and communities found strength in his message of unity. Though Keanu himself remained largely out of the spotlight, his impact was undeniable. In Hollywood, the ripple effects of his actions reshaped how celebrities engaged with the public. More actors began using their platforms responsibly, advocating for causes they truly believed in rather than chasing headlines. Directors sought out projects that highlighted themes of empathy and resilience, knowing audiences craved stories rooted in authenticity. Industry awards ceremonies introduced new categories recognizing contributions to social good, celebrating individuals who made a difference beyond entertainment. Keanu's name was often mentioned during these events, not because he sought recognition, but because his example set a new standard. For Keanu, life carried on much as it always had. He avoided the trappings of fame, choosing instead to live quietly and focus on what mattered most to him. Friends described him as unchanged by the viral moment, still the same humble and generous person he'd always been. He spent his days working on passion projects, riding motorcycles, and spending time with loved ones. Occasionally, he attended charity events or lent his support to causes close to his heart, but he did so without fanfare, letting his actions speak louder than words. Meanwhile, the host of the infamous interview faded further into obscurity. Her attempts to reinvent herself met with mixed success, and though some praised her efforts to foster dialogue, others remained skeptical of her motives. Over time, she stepped away from the media entirely, leaving behind a legacy defined by controversy. For many, her career served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing sensationalism over substance. In contrast, Keanu's enduring appeal lay in his unwavering commitment to authenticity. As the movement inspired by Keanu grew, grassroots organizations sprang up worldwide, each dedicated to spreading kindness and understanding. In India, a group called Reeves Ripple organized monthly workshops where participants learned conflict resolution skills. In Africa, volunteers distributed books highlighting the importance of empathy to rural schools. Even in war-torn regions, people found solace in Keanu's message, using it as a beacon of hope amid chaos. His simple yet profound philosophy transcended language barriers and cultural differences, uniting humanity in a shared pursuit of compassion. Back home, fans kept the spirit alive through creative expressions of gratitude. Artists painted murals, featuring Keanu's likeness alongside quotes from the interview, turning city walls into tributes to kindness. Musicians composed songs inspired by his words, blending them with melodies that resonated across generations. Writers penned essays and novels exploring the themes of empathy and resilience, ensuring his message reached corners of society untouched by traditional media. These acts of admiration weren't just tributes, they were testaments to the power of one person's example to spark change. Even in unexpected places, Keanu's influence took root. Scientists studying human behavior referenced his interview when discussing emotional intelligence, noting how his ability to stay composed under pressure demonstrated remarkable self-awareness. Psychologists incorporated his techniques into therapy sessions, teaching clients to pause before reacting and respond with thoughtfulness rather than impulse. Educators adapted his methods for classrooms, helping students navigate conflicts peacefully. Across disciplines, experts agreed. Keanu's approach wasn't just admirable, it was effective. Despite the widespread acclaim, Keanu never sought credit for the movement he inadvertently sparked. When asked about it during rare interviews, he shrugged off the praise, redirecting attention to those actively making a difference. "It's not about me," he said simply. "It's about all of us working together to create a better world." His humility only endeared him further to fans, reinforcing the very principles he championed. As time passed, the story of the interview evolved into something greater than its original context. It became a symbol of resistance against division and hostility, a call to action for anyone seeking to make a positive impact. Documentaries revisited the event, framing it as a turning point in cultural history. Scholars analyzed its significance, arguing that Keanu's response exemplified the timeless value of empathy in an increasingly polarized world. Even late-night comedians joked about it, acknowledging its lasting relevance with humor and warmth. For Keanu, the true measure of success wasn't fame or recognition, it was seeing people embrace kindness in their daily lives. He found joy in small gestures, hearing about strangers performing random acts of goodwill, reading letters from fans inspired to treat others with compassion, witnessing communities come together to support one another. These moments reminded him why staying true to himself mattered more than anything else. By now, the interview had entered the realm of legend. Parents told their children stories about the man who shut down a hostile host with grace and wisdom, turning a tense confrontation into a lesson in humanity. Teachers used it as a case study in classrooms, demonstrating the power of patience and understanding. Social media users continued to share clips of the exchange, introducing new generations to its timeless message. What had once been a fleeting moment had transformed into a guiding principle for countless lives. Through it all, Keanu remained a quiet force for good. He avoided grand gestures or public declarations, preferring to let his actions inspire quietly. Whether donating anonymously to charities, mentoring young filmmakers, or simply offering a kind word to someone in need, he embodied the values he preached. To those who knew him best, this consistency was his greatest strength. "He doesn't talk much about changing the world," a close friend once said, "but every day he does something to make it a little brighter." As another decade dawned, the movement inspired by Keanu showed no signs of slowing down. Grassroots initiatives flourished globally, driven by ordinary people committed to extraordinary ideals. Schools adopted curriculums centered on empathy and emotional intelligence, preparing students to face challenges with resilience and compassion. Workplaces prioritized mental health and inclusivity, fostering environments where everyone felt valued and heard. Communities rallied around shared goals, proving that cooperation could overcome even the toughest obstacles. And yet, amidst all the progress, Keanu stayed grounded. He understood that real change came not from dramatic speeches or viral moments, but from consistent everyday actions. By living authentically and treating others with kindness, he had shown the world what was possible. His legacy wasn't defined by accolades or achievements. It was written in the hearts of those he touched, inspiring them to carry the torch forward. In the end, the story of Keanu Reeves shutting down a woke host live wasn't just about one man or one moment. It was about the enduring power of kindness to unite, heal, and transform. It was a reminder that authenticity always triumphs over noise, and that even in the face of adversity, we have the power to choose connection over conflict. And perhaps, that was the most profound lesson of all, that the simplest truths are often the most revolutionary.